This is the BhamQuants presentation for Power BI. We're going to talk about visuals today. The agenda has 14 different types of visuals that we're going to look at. And we will go and start off with general. So in general, you can drag a field onto the canvas and select the visual directly. So for example, let's take total sales, put it on the canvas, and now we can change that visual to whatever we want to change it to. And so we're on a, let's bring in a pie chart right there. And we have total sales, and let's bring in the region as well. And now we have a pie chart by region. Each visual has its own unique configuration on the visuals section. So try that again, I didn't mean to do that. So this area right here, the fields area will change according to each visual, and the formatting options will change by each visual as well. So we could grab the gauge visual and this changes, or we can grab the matrix visual and this changes as well. If you select over a section on the visual, it'll give you some information about it. So this is the East region with its dollar sales. So it will give you a tooltip of what you are looking at. The format roller is how you change how it is presented. Commonly will be colors, and so we can change how those look if we so choose. So this is how it looks on the format ruler. So let's add in a column chart. Move that over here. We're going to bring in a column chart, and we're going to bring that over here. It's fine. So we're going to bring in the state into the and sales total. And there's our column chart. There's our sales total by state. And so now let's look at the format roller. We have the X and the Y axis. And so on the Y axis, what I want to mention is that there is a start and an end value. So here we go up to about $550 million, and so maybe we want the end value to be 400 million. Did I get that right? There it is. So that's how you can change the axis values vertically, is by changing the y-axis. Of course, we could start at a different value. Everyone here is over 100 million, and so we can change the minimum value as well. I like to put borders on all these things, and pretty much all these visuals are going to have a border. Under the format ruler border, I'm just going to turn on that border. It gives me a visual cue of where that visual actually is. It can also help you with aligning your visuals. So if I take this one and add a border onto it, then I can more easily see how these line up. Another thing we can do is up here on the menu system. Let's click on View and Show Grid Lines. And so now that we can see the grid lines in the background, we can align things onto the grid line as well, if we choose to do that. You can also click on Snap to Grid, which will see how it pops. So it makes it a little bit easier to get things perfectly aligned if that is something that you need to do. So that's kind of sort of the basics, kind of universal to all visuals. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn off this grid stuff because that's not how I want to play around. So let's look at the individual visuals. Let's look at the hierarchy visual. So we're going to put in a column chart. And bring in the date. And total sales. Okay. So I brought in, on the date side, I brought in the date hierarchy. That's what this view right here is saying, that this is a hierarchy. And so the first way that we see this visual is with the years. But maybe I want quarters or months or days or something like that. So we can drill through, and here's a drill button to where we can go to quarter, we can go to month, and we can go to day. The problem with this drill is that it didn't combine things together into a hierarchy. So here we have the full years. Now this is quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4, but that's across all years. It combined them together. So the other way that we can do that is with the hierarchy. It's the third button up here. And this time when it drills down, it's going to go within those values. And so that's a little bit hard to see. We can go to year and quarter. Okay? So let's do that again. The standard go to next level will combine everything together, or the hierarchy will keep things split apart the way that you would expect to actually see them. So one thing I would mention is how the dates are getting very clustered. 2000, this is year 2000, quarter 1, January 20th. It's really quite kind of clustered. And so let's go into the format painter onto the x-axis, and we're going to go to concatenate labels, and we can turn that off. And so now it has the year, the quarter, the month, the day. So we could break it apart with layers, or we can have all of it into one piece. And so also, if you're at the very top of the hierarchy, this is at the full year, notice that there is no concatenate option on my x-axis. That capability disappeared. Because there's only one value at the highest level. It's only the years. There's nothing to concatenate onto the years. And so it disappeared. And also the concatenate option does not work if you do the standard drill down where it combines it. There's nothing to concatenate onto these quarters because this is just Q2 of all years. So there's no concatenation option. So that is how the drill down and hierarchy drilling work. Let's talk about filters. So the filter pane is right here. You can make it big, small. And it shows page level filters and all page filters. So we can do it for just the one page or for all of our pages. And then if you click on a particular visual, then you will also have visual level filters. So it's 3 different levels of filters that it's giving you. So let's come over here to the world view. And so the default values for filters are the ones that are currently in use. And so we can see that I have state and total units. So the filters on this page are by state and by total units. Those are the default values. But that doesn't limit you. You can have other visuals. So let's filter this by US only. We can do that by taking the country and putting it into the page filter, and then we can click on the United States. Okay? Let's look at the column chart. So here, I have data from the year 2000 up to the year 2015. But I want to restrict this to be 2010 and forward. Let's do a x-axis. Well, one is an advanced filter is my goal here. And I have forgotten how to do that. Does someone know where the advanced filter is? That's okay, we'll move on. Probably on the x-axis, there's probably a minimum, which is right here. Start at 2010, and we'll let it go to auto. And so that restricted us here. That's how we can do that. Here we go. This is what it was. We hit the drop-down button to get into the advanced filters. That's what we wanted. And we're going to do a basic filter. And on the basic filter, we're going to just select the years that we want to see. And I don't know why this is giving me a hard time. There we go. There we go. So that's how we do the advanced filter, is right here. In the case of this pie chart, donut chart I should say, let's go with our total units, and we're going to do a advanced filter on it, and we're going to do a top in advanced filter. That's what it was. You're exactly right. I'm sorry. Right there. On the filter type, it's top in, and we're going to put in the top 15 products. What am I doing wrong? Wow. Top in. We're going to do the top 10 items. Doesn't want to do it. Let's go back to advanced filter. Top in. We'll go with the bottom 10. I don't know. I don't know what. Oh, geez. By value. That's exactly the issue. Now we can apply it. I just had to finish reading it. Good call. Needed the help there. We'll go with the top. Apply it. There it is. So there's the top 10 products by value of year-to-date sales. All right, that one's a little rough. That is a great question. I think you could get there by adding another visual and use that visual to filter this visual. But that is a good question. All right, let's move on. I didn't take good notes on that one. Combo bar charts, also known as a combination chart. So we're going to insert a line in stacked bar chart. And so it's this one right here, the line and stacked column chart. And let's look at the inputs for that. So the inputs, there's a shared axis, the column series, column values, line values, and that's fine. So the column values are going to be total sales for the column values. The line values will be total units. Total sales for column values. Line values are total units. Shared axis will be the date I'm going to specifically bring in the year. Okay? So the columns are the dollars, the line is the units, and the axis is the years. And if we go over a particular value, so this will show us the year 2006, and the total sales of 457 million, whatever. So when we hover over this, it's going to give us both values. So another fun one, we have the column series. And so let's add the product category to the column series right here, and that will give you stacked columns. And then as opposed to stacked columns like this, you could also go with the next visual, which is clustered column chart, which will give it to you that direction. So that's those two visuals. Okay. The analytics pane is a fun little thing. So in this case, you want to build a forecast. You have 10 years data, you want to push it out to 15 years. And so we're going to make that happen. You can also put on basic statistics on it, such as minimums or maximums. And so let's put in a clustered column chart. We're going to put total sales into the values and the product segment into the axis. Okay? And so to the right of the formatting roller is the analytics pane. And the options on the analytics pane are going to change by the visual you have selected. So not everything can do what we're going to do. And so let's add a minimum line to it. So we're running from $0 up to 1.7 billion. So let's add a minimum line. We're going to add it. We're going to base it off of total sales. And that's it. So the dotted line right here is the lowest value on the chart, which is aligned with this column. There are also formatting options for that. So we could turn it orange or I believe there's, rather than a dash, we can make it a solid line, whatever we want to do. And we could do the same thing with the maximum line, which we're going to add, and it's up there at the top. So oddly, the stacked column chart does not have the same options. So if we switch to this chart, it won't allow you to have the mins and maxes. It's only on the clustered column chart that you can put the mins and maxes. Strikes me as an oversight, but I don't know the story behind that. The stacked column chart does have an option for a constant line, which we can add. I'm going to put in $1 billion. I think that's a billion, or that was a trillion. Try that again. So now we've put in a constant line of $1 billion. So that may be useful if that's your budget, for example. So let's move that off to the side. And let's create a forecast. And we're going to do that with a line chart, which is right here. That is not what I wanted to do. Line chart is right here. Okay. And so we're going to bring in total sales and the date. And we want to forecast it 5 periods forward. So we're going to go to the analytics, and we're going to forecast. We're going to add a forecast. And how many periods? I'm going to forecast it 10 periods forward. And I've put a 95% confidence interval on it. Okay? So let's move that to 5 points forward. There's a 5-period forward-looking forecast. And we're going to ignore the last 10 points. See what that looks like. Okay? So that's very good for a look back of how good was your guess of how you're going to do against budget. So that was your guess back then, and here's how reality has changed over time. Something along those lines. And just to be explicit, we're going to add a trend line right here. And I want to point out on the forecast, let's remove that guy, put in a 0, that's fine. So I want to point out here the difference between a forecast with the cone and the trend line. And importantly, notice that the trend line is going with, I'm just going to call it averages, if you will, for the last data point, but the forecast starts at the exact point of where your data ended. So the trend line is up here, the forecast is with your last data point. So a forecast is not a trend line, is the importance to say there. Okay. So let's get rid of that trend line, because that's not what I want to talk about. Get rid of that, it's gone. And I want to expand our date to be the quarter and the year. And let's change our forecast to be 10 periods. Okay. So notice that the forecast has seasonality in it. And so that is an option, seasonality right here. Now, I left it as auto. Let's go ahead and put in a seasonality of 3. And what's going to happen? Nothing's going to, well, okay, I don't know why I did that. Quarterly would be every 3. Oh, I'm sorry. Quarterly, there are 4 data points in a year. And so if you have seasonality of 4 data points, that's the same thing as quarterly. So that's why putting a seasonality of 4 doesn't matter. Or you could just leave it as auto. It's the exact same thing. The importance I want to focus on here is that when you do a forecast, you can seasonally adjust your forecast. Okay. Good stuff. Clustering. So we're going to bring in products category, and we're going to put a filter directly on the canvas. And so that is our goal. Let's put something up here. That's not what I wanted to do. Put this up here. We'll get total sales by year. That's fine. Don't care. Okay. So by putting this over here, we can, of course, click through this, and it's a filter directly on the canvas. We can control click and bring on multiple items simultaneously, if we want to do that, or go with single items. And that's fine. So we're going to go to the format roller and click on selection controls. That's my goal here. What am I doing wrong here? We want this, format roller, general, no. I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong one. Just ignore that last few minutes there. I was supposed to be on the slicers. That was my mistake. I'm sorry. Let's try this again. So we're going to put the category onto the canvas. There we go, just like that. And so now we can select this. It filters what's on the graph, on the canvas. We can multi-select, all that kind of stuff, and that's great. And then we're going to change this from the default of it being a table, and we're going to turn it into a slicer. And I can never remember what the slicer looks like. Which one? The funnel. Right there, slicer. Good call. There it is. That's what we're after. Now we go with the format ruler, and now we can go into selection controls. That's what I was after. And we can do show multi-select with control. So that's what I wanted, was now we have check boxes rather than using the control button. That was my goal. Okay. So select all is actually a negative filter. And so let's put on the select all. So under the select all, okay, we're going to take off urban and we're going to take off youth. Now select all is here because I've flagged it here. So this is a very important concept. This is a negative filter. So I have mixed, rural, urban, and youth. When I refresh my data, I'm going to get the city. It's a brand new version. Is that going to be in my data or out of my data? Well, since we have the select all option up, you can see it right here, this is a negative filter. So I have removed urban, I have removed youth. City will still be in my data because select all is on. If we go the opposite version, we turn off select all and we have it with just mix and rule, when city comes in, it will be out of my data. So this is a positive selection. The select all is a negative selection. So let's hit the three dots right here. We're going to click on search, and that gives us the capability to do searching right here. So we can type in urban into our search, and there it is. I don't know why it brought up youth, to be honest. So that is on the three dots, the search functionality. We can switch from list mode to drop-down mode. That is not what I wanted it to do. That's the focus. Here. So this guy is list mode or drop-down mode. So now I've put it into drop-down mode, click, click, and we're done. Or you can be in list mode, which is click, click, and we're done. So those are the two options, list or drop down. I'm going to leave it on list. We're going to go with single select. So this means that we can't control click, just single select. And the other thing I wanted to point out is on the format ruler, general, we can do the orientation is horizontal. And this is a neat little thing. We can come over here and let's make it, spread it out just like that. And now we kind of have a tabbed report. So we have this single selection, we go horizontal, and you can have this tabbed look to your report. So let's delete that. And we're going to bring in another slicer. Right there. And we're going to bring in the date on that slicer. And let's bring it up here. So I wanted to mention that on the dates, it gives you a slider bar if you want to use a date slicer. You can also click in here, and you can point and click the dates that you want for your filters. So that's the same slicer, but we're using a date field rather than individual values. All right. This is item number 8. We're going to look at the focus mode. So for every visual in the upper right, you have these little buttons right here. And the second button is the focus mode. And this will blow up the visual into the full size of the canvas. And so let's look at total units by segment. We're going to blow this one up. And so now we can see it nice and big. Now while you're in the focus mode, you can click on the 3 dots and do show data right here. And it will pop the data down here. And we're going to go back to the report and focus on total units by year and category right here. Come back up to that one. And we're going to show the data again. Okay, so there's our matrix report. But now since this visual, the difference between this one and the prior one, these stacked column charts have multiple types of data. It has the category, and it has the unit, and it has the year. So it has 2 values. Because it has 2 values, the show data shows into a matrix report. The prior one showed into a table report. And we're going to go here. So this is vertical versus horizontal view, if you want to do that. And there's a recent bug, unfortunately, in which you cannot cleanly exit out of this data view right here. You want to hit like the X button or something like that. You can't do that. I assume it's going to be fixed either next month or the month after, or something like that. And so in order to clear this data view, you have to go back to your report and then back into focus mode, and that will clear the data view. That's the only way to do it currently. Like I said, I assume that that is going to be cleared up soon. Let's look at some maps. So we're going to graph some geographic data, and they've changed how this stuff works in recent time. They've brought in that ArcGIS map. But for the time being, there's 3 different visuals we have on maps. So let's start off with the globe right here, just a regular map. And we're going to bring in total sales. And then the location. And I'm going to bring in this filter of location. And so here, we have a bubble map with sales represented by the size of the bubble. And notice that when I filtered to the US only data right here, also notice that there used to be, I forgot to clear this, if your location is not working the way you expect it, then you can click on the location column. So the word location doesn't tell you where you are. Is this a city or a state? So we'll give you an example of Georgia. So the Georgia is a state. It's also a city up in the northeast. So which one is it? If it just says Georgia, then the location won't be able to tell you what to do. And so the way that you can fix that is you click on your field of location. Then we go to modeling, and then tell you what, the data category right here. So previously it was uncategorized. This is how I had my location before I did this filter. Notice the Columbia. So Columbia, South America, or Columbia, South Carolina. So we've clicked on location. We go to column tools. Then we go to the data category, and we say these are actually states. So when we tell it's a state, it fixes my Columbia data point and puts it into Columbia, South Carolina. Okay? And that cleans up the map in this case. So maybe you don't care about the size of the bubble. Maybe you care about a yes-no scenario, in which case we don't want the map, we want the filled map. And now we have filled in all states equally. Notice that Maine is missing, so that's our no side. The rest of the country is a yes side. And I would also mention that in the format ruler, we can go into data colors and change up our colors if you wish to do that. So that's all well and fine. The ArcGIS mapping has quite a lot of capability to it as well. And I immediately hit with the cool stuff that I wanted to do was premium side. And so I was a bit frustrated by that and eventually gave up on it and decided to stick with the bubble maps and the fill maps. For example, what I kind of want right here is shading for my biggest state to be dark, my smallest state to be light, and ArcGIS can do that. This particular visual cannot. Let's look at tables and matrices. And so a table is going to give you a row, one row for each value. And it's the way that we typically think of an efficient database is the way to think of what a table is. Or you can also think of it as a brick of data like it's used inside of a pivot table. And so let's insert a table right here. Bring that over to here. And we're going to bring in the country, the product category, and the total sales. And so we have country, category, sales, this typical matrix, this typical table format. So a matrix is kind of the human readable, this is good for a database. A matrix is kind of a human readable format of this. So let's bring in the matrix, which is this guy right here. And we'll do the same thing of country, category, total sales. But this time, see that it goes into a grid. So this is the way that humans like to think about our data in the matrix form. Computers like to think of it in the table form. You can resize these columns by dragging them around. You can auto-size the columns by double-clicking on them. You can add a second level to the matrix. If you add a second level to the matrix, then you have to expand to see the results. And so on the matrix side, we're going to add the state onto the row. Try that again. Bring the state into the row. And so now we have to open up France in order to see the state. And so that's what happens. So you can stack things into your rows and columns, but then you're going to have to expand and contract them. I would also like to mention that if you do this, we'll take the US because it's the big one. Notice that the summary is at the top. And the grand total is at the bottom. So the grand total down here is at the bottom. So in the format ruler, you can do all sorts of things. Inside of the style, you can just set global styles. I recommend you play with this. These are just very quick ways to make it pop in particular ways. You could turn on a grid. You can turn on a color for that grid. That's the vertical lines right there. You can change the thickness of that. So there's tons of style options that you can do inside of the format ruler. You can get the column headers. So I'm going to turn those a particular color. So you can do something like that. We can put in a background color like that. you can play around with your subtotals right here. So we can turn off column subtotals. So there's lots of different formatting you can do inside of the format ruler. Stop that. Number 11, scatter charts. That would be this one. So we're going to bring in the x-axis, I'm going to bring in as total sales. The y-axis, I'm going to bring in as total units for the scatter chart. And this creates a single dot if you do this. And the reason it's a single dot is that total sales and total units are aggregate values. And so each one is just a single data point. And that's why we have a single dot. Well, we can make those aggregates apply to other areas. So let's bring in the product category. We're going to bring the category up into the details field. So now for each category, we have a dot of sales and units. We can change the legend, bring the legend in right here. And so now, within category, there is the legend of manufacturer. So we've blown this out even further, but the legend is colored, is the importance. So the category, the details, will not be colored. The legend will be colored. So it broke it further and colored it by bringing in a legend. The size of the dots, we can do that with, I'm going to choose, in this case, total sales. That's not exactly the best way to do it because since total sales is along the bottom, the largest dot will be on the right, the smallest dot will be on the left. So we've twice talked about the size. But the point is on this size section down here, we can put in some sort of aggregate field to determine the size of your bubbles. On the format ruler, we can play around with category labels, and you can see what those look like. On the field tab, we can work with the play axis, and this is a really fun thing. So let's bring in the date onto the play axis. We're going to bring the year in onto the play axis right here. That gives us this bar right here, and then we can play, we can run an animation. So this is something that's fairly difficult to do in Excel, but it's wonderful to do it right here. And so another fun thing, let's back it up, we're right here. So let's click a button. I'm going to click on this bubble, and it shows us the path of that bubble. And so now we can watch that bubble trace over time. So I could pick on this bubble right there. Or I could control click, and we have two bubbles. And we can watch them both trace at the same time. Okay? That is an awesome visual that I will use. Waterfall. So waterfall charts can be used to show changes in a particular value over time, or to show multiple components that make up the same single period change. So it's a little bit difficult to explain that way. So let's just put in a waterfall chart right here. And we're going to bring in on the year in the category. And the y-axis, we're going to put in year-to-date sales variance on the y-axis. And there's our waterfall chart. Now, it's important to note, all along for all these visuals I've been doing total sales. So this time I'm using a sales variance. I guess I could have done total sales variance, but whatever. So you want just the variance because we're running across time. And so I don't want the grand total, I want the change from year to year. And so that is a waterfall chart across time. Alternatively, we could have a single period from the year 2000 to 2001, but bring in like product sales or something like that. And you'll see the contribution of product sales, so the individual components within that 1 year time period. So you can do it either way. This is the gauge chart, the card chart, and the KPI. We're going to do all three. And so typically visuals are going to show a comparison of values between two different categories, multiple different categories. And a KPI is a single metric over time. And Power BI has several different KPI options. And a gauge is very good for showing progress towards a goal. And so let's play with the gauge chart visual right here. And we're going to go with total sales. And by default, that's not what I wanted. Bring in total sales. And so by default, whatever value you use on a gauge chart is going to set itself to the 50% mark. And you can drag fields into the minimum and the minimum and maximums right here, in order to change that 50%. And you're going to use this to compare actuals against your budget, or you can go into a format ruler and set them manually. So what we can do is we could take your budget, wherever it is, and put it into the minimum, something like that. But I'm going to instead go into the format ruler, and I'm going to go to the gauge axis. I'm going to set it to the minimum is 3 billion, and the maximum I'm going to set to 6 billion. Right there. So now we've set before we were going 0 to whatever, now we're going from 3 billion on the left to 6 billion on the right. I'm going to set a target value of 5.5 billion. Right there. And so now we have this line showing our target. You can play around with this a little bit. It's somewhat limited on what you can do with this gauge. That XViz visual has a fantastic options for gauges. I was very impressed with it, even so much that I was going to demo it anyway, even though it is paid, but they didn't provide any of the data. And so I was going to have to create my own data sets, like how much time am I going to spend on this one visual? And so I decided to stick with just this one. If you like these gauge visuals, if you're doing a lot of stuff against budget or something like that, check out the XViz visual. There's videos on it. You can see what it does. So that is a gauge. Now let's bring in another KPI. The card KPI is right here. And we're going to bring in total sales. And then from the format ruler, we're going to go with data label. And we're going to play with the display units right here. And so we can display it in thousands, we can display it in billions, we can display it in millions. However you want to display it, I'm going to leave it on auto. And so you can change your formatting with that capability. And we're going to show a category label right here. And so it is total sales right there. I can turn that on, turn that off. And so you're going to so you can also use these cards to display natural language metrics. So we're going to say in words that total sales is 5.13 billion is our goal. And so we're going to go to modeling, new measure, and we're going to say progress. I'm going to make it progress 1 because I think I already have progress in here. Is equal to, I'm going to say progress on unit sales this year, colon, quote, and sum of units. Okay. So I have put into words progress on unit sales this year, and I put in the sum of units. Okay? And so, what did I do wrong? Sum of units. There we go. Okay. So I have this new metric called progress 1. And so let's look at that. Let's bring progress 1 onto the canvas. And we're going to switch it to a card. And we're going to switch the format ruler to word wrap. That's on. So we can go either way. Crush that down. Bring this over. And there you can see it. And so we're going to modify this slightly because I don't like this number right here. So I'm going to go to the progress 1, and I'm going to change it to be, I'm going to wrap this sum into format. I'll put this, the sum of unit sales in there, comma, and the format I want is pound, comma, pound, pound, pound. And let's see what that looks like. And so I've wrapped this value with the format. And so you can use natural language to tie back to some sort of metric. Okay? That is that. And so the last thing that we're going to look at is static items. We're going to go onto the ribbon up here, and we're going to insert a text box. And in this text box, I'm going to write, Nick is cool. And that's great. So the static item comes with a great convenience. We can just go ahead and pop that right there. We can make that bold, change the font. Is there color formatting right there? And so we can just take this static text and create a visual out of it. We can also do BhamQuants. And with that, we're going to click this link, and it will default to BhamQuants.com. Done. And now we have a clickable link to wherever you want, in this case, BhamQuants. So let's go back to insert, and we're going to insert an image. Insert an image. And we can pick any image we wish. I'm going to pick the Power BI logo. So we can put images onto our canvas. We can also insert shapes. We have very limited options for shapes. I'm going to pick an oval in this case, right there. And we need to do a few things to it. We're going to turn the fill off, and I want the line to be red. And now we can put it somewhere and call attention to things. So that's how you can use that one. What you cannot do is draw an arrow. So there is an arrow in here. So for a shape, I'll look at the arrow, but it is a truly terrible arrow. And so it is not really that useful. So these static options are very limited. Text box, shapes, images. It is somewhat limited, but they do exist, and the oval is the most practical of them, in my opinion. That is our 14 items. Questions have been quite abundant.
Can you even turn the arrow sideways?
I tried to do that, and I played with it for, yeah, there you go, rotation. Yeah, so I was, I got frustrated with it so quick, it was ridiculous. Just why am I doing this? And so what I did, um, you, I don't know if you noticed it, was right here, I had a green check box. And this is my little arrow, which I used at the very beginning of the presentation to say what things I was going to use, because there weren't any good shapes that I could use. So I just downloaded an image to make it work. So that's what I would do if I wanted an arrow, is just download a picture of an arrow, which is terrible, but those are the options you have. All right, well, that's all I have. Next month, we will not be meeting here. December is just too close to Christmas. We aren't going to do that. So we'll be back in January. I wanted to be able to announce the topic. Part of what we will talk about in January will be combining visuals together. I'm not sure how large that will be, so I believe I'm going to be adding some more stuff onto it, so I really couldn't announce a topic right now. If you're not on the newsletter, go to BhamQuants.com, sign up for the newsletter. I think everyone signed in. Did you sign in? If you didn't, I need you to sign in. The analytics lecture will be at Cobb's Allen, which is near here, on December 4th. And strategy-wise, we'll be there giving a presentation. I expect that to be pretty interesting. They are the premier data science company in Birmingham, possibly the only data science company in Birmingham. Strategy-wise is a data science company, and they'll be giving a presentation on December 4th at Cobb's Allen. It's on the website. Always point people there. Sign up for the newsletter. I haven't updated it yet. I'll update it tonight or tomorrow. It'll be December 4th, Cobb's Allen, and it'll be strategy-wise, giving a presentation on data science. So.
I have a slicer question.
Yes.
I don't know an easy way to do this, but I have multiple fields, like category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I can have a item that could be in any one of those fields.
Ooh.
And I've been able to select one thing,
Yes.
but I haven't been able to select multiple.
Ooh.
Now, there's a way for me to do it where I can create a field and you pivot them on one field, but it's kind of messy to do that.
Yeah.
I was trying to avoid having to do that. But
A thought that comes to mind is to create a measure.
yeah, that's what I did. But when I did that, it acted like an and instead of an or.
Yeah.
And I could select one thing, but then when I tried to do a control click, they'd all go away. You know, so I don't know. I don't know what I was doing wrong, but I tried many things.
At the most fundamental level, why is the same value in multiple fields?
There's a form, and they're basically adjustments.
Okay.
So there's a drop-down list of 10 adjustments,
Yeah.
and they can pick any of the 10 or any of the 5 fields. So any one field, any one adjustment can be in any field.
Okay.
So, and I'm trying to track how much they're using, you know, each adjustment.
If you could combine those fields together into a new table
Right.
that has all those fields in it,
Okay.
and then you may be able to filter on that table.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if that would work or not.
I think that will work. I was just trying to avoid it and keep from having, you know,
I don't know if that'll work.
I think it will. I think it will.
That's tough.
My people can cope with most interesting.